Hello, everybody. Welcome to this next episode of the Food Lovers Elective, a craft conversation series. Just to tell you a little bit about ourselves, at Craft, we seek to foster a transformative regional food system in Western Pennsylvania that recognizes the central role of food systems in our society and values of the people who live and work within them. We envision a food system that is equitable, fostering fairness and transparency across the value chain. A system that is sustainable, actualizing economic, social, and cultural well-being as part of the food system. And a food system that is inclusive, valuing dignity, sovereignty, and the inherent power of all people. So today's episode is titled Towing the Line, the Black Queer Experience in Colorblind Nonprofit Spaces. Our student moderator, Sydney Lawson, will talk with her special guest, Malika Simmons, about the shared challenges they've experienced in colorblind spaces. So this episode will take about an hour with the last 10 to 15 minutes reserved for question and answer. Please feel free to engage with us through the chat. Also, please feel free to send any additional questions that you may have using the Q&A feature on the bottom of the screen. With that, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Sydney's worked hard on it, and I think it's going to be great. So I'm going to hand it off to Sydney.
Thank you so much, Ani. Thank you everyone for coming, and Malika especially, thank you so much for coming to this series. I'm super excited to talk to you. So Malika, you are currently in your third year working for Food Corps as the DC coordinator, right?
Yes, that is perfect.
Yay. Okay, so you have so much nonprofit experience under your belt, and now you're in a supervisor role. That's really incredible. So how was that transition like for you? This isn't part of the interview, but I'm just like curious. I just want to know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was a service member with Food Corps in 2018 to 2019. And immediately after that service year ended, I became the program coordinator. And I was actually going to serve a second year. But then the position opened up and I decided to apply just to see what would happen. So the transition was pretty difficult the first couple of months, especially because in my mind, I was prepared to go back to the school that I was serving at and like connect more with the students and the teachers that I had already started building relationships with. And then it was also difficult because a lot of my friends did a second year of service. And so I was like trying to balance being like their friend and their supervisor at the same time, and also trying to find like my place like in the organization. So that definitely took at least 6 months, maybe more, for me to like finish that, like feel like I completed like that transition of like feeling like I was an actual like staff member versus being a service member, which is completely different, but I still feel like I had like that service member mindset when I came into the organization, like fresh, my first, like, as I said to a lot of people, like real job, quote unquote. Yeah.
Wow. 6 months to transition that, I mean, I feel like that's actually a pretty quick transition, because like most people, when they move from like a subordinate role to a management role, it's like, it is definitely obviously difficult, just as it was for you, especially when you have friends that you are now managing that you used to be on the same level with, used to be your peers. It's just a whole different dynamic. And I feel like if you maybe had done this transition in another field, the experience might have been different maybe.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it was like also nice though to have people that I already knew, because I also like had a shared experience with them from being a service member. And so having that connection, I feel like has helped me even like now in my third year of this role, being able to relate to our current service members and knowing kind of what they've been going through, kind of like what you were going through when you were a service member as well. Like I feel like we were able to like build that rapport just because of my own personal like lived experiences as a member.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for the audience, so that everyone's on the same page, because I didn't say this, but Malika was actually my coordinator. So she definitely kept me sane. There were so many moments where like I was just at the end of my rope, and then I would have conversations with her and everything would be so much better. Everything made so much more sense. And it was so wonderful working with you. So I'm so glad that you're here and we can have another chit chat about our various experiences and your experiences in food justice. So on that note, let's get this started. Pre-interview, current interview. So since you've been in the nonprofit sphere for so long, what are your thoughts on the work culture environment within nonprofits that focus on food justice specifically?
Wow, you started off with a bang. Heavy hitting question. Wow, that's such a big question. I think in terms of like work culture, it feels like there's always something to be done. Like there's constantly moving pieces. There's whether that's like policy and advocacy work, food education work, like direct service, things like that. And it feels like because there are so many moving pieces, it's sometimes really difficult to slow down and acknowledge the progress that like me, myself, or like my coworkers, our organization as a whole has achieved, because we're always constantly looking for the best way for us to like, prove ourselves as an organization, best way to get funding from funders and things like that. And I feel like that's been a really challenging part because of the fact where I'm kind of like I like to reminisce about things. I like to chill sometimes, and it feels like sometimes I don't have the emotional energy or space to do that, especially when there's like so many things going on right now in the world and like in DC in general. So I feel like that's definitely like a big part of the work culture is like the pace and how quick and how fast things are constantly moving, and just finding time to like take a step back and breathe is like something that I always try and do, but it feels like sometimes I can't do.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like with nonprofit work, the work truly never stops. And I remember with Food Corps, they were like, our goal is to not exist. And I think that's so admirable. But in the meantime, you just have to be on constantly and aware, and just ready to grind. It's also very interesting because I remember I would always peruse through your stories on social media, and I would love how much you strongly advocate for self-care and rest and things like that. Yeah.
Yes, I love self-care, rest. That's like my whole thing. Sometimes I give people advice that I don't take myself, but I'm working on it.
It's that nonprofit life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that dynamic, like the go go go, the hard work culture, like the work never stops? Like what are your thoughts on that dynamic within the sphere, like the nonprofit sphere overall, like as a whole? Like what's your take on that?
The take on, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So when it comes to what you just described, having to always work so hard that you really don't have time for self-care, and having to work so hard that you don't always get a chance to reflect on your accomplishments, that there's always something to be done. What are your thoughts on that dynamic within the nonprofit sphere as a whole?
I feel like because a lot of folks, myself included, feel that push and pull of always feeling like there's something to be done, but also wanting to balance like your own well-being and things like that, that can quickly lead to burnout, which is why I feel like a lot of folks transition out of working at nonprofits and might start working for, I don't know, like companies, I don't even know, other places that aren't nonprofit.
Like corporate America.
Corporate America, there we go. I was like, it starts with a C, but I could not remember what it was. To make that transition, because when you are like, especially in like food education work, or even any nonprofit work, a lot of folks are passionate and have a direct correlation or relationship with the work that they're doing. And when you are giving so much of yourself to do that work, there's only so much of you that you can give before you feel completely depleted. And I feel like that is like a very common thing that I've talked to, like with my friends who also work in nonprofits, with my mom who has worked in a nonprofit for many years, feeling like your whole being is being given, and all your energy is being given to the communities that you really want to serve and help. And at the same time, it's like difficult to create that balance like within yourself as well.
That's such a real concern of mine. And I'm so interested in that idea of like giving so much of yourself. You're putting you're not just putting your physical energy, you're putting like your inner energy into this, you know, like the things that make up who you are as a person. You're putting that into your work. I find that very, very interesting. So even though I feel like we touched on this just now, obviously, what are some of the challenges of food justice work specifically within communities of color? And how does your identity as a Black femme affect this, if at all?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think that, a lot of folks, I'm assuming the folks in the call know that food justice is directly related to racial justice because it's all connected. And so, especially here in DC, the amount of families and students of color, predominantly Black families, who don't have the same access to the grocery stores, healthy foods, and things like that is so disproportionate to compared to the white families and white folks that live in the city. And so I grew up in DC, I'm from DC. I myself like experienced food insecurity growing up, but I didn't know what it was until I learned the language of what it was. And so me deciding to do food corps was my like personal choice of like wanting to give back to the community that helped raise me to help. And I also wanted to like be an inspiration as well. But I feel like in a lot of the nonprofit spaces that focus on food justice, majority of those folks who work at these organizations are white, and the majority of the communities that these organizations are serving are Black and Brown communities of color and other communities of color. And it feels so jarring sometimes to like hear like the language that we use and hearing like how we like describe the situation, like live people's like lived experiences. And like myself as like someone who can like personally relate. And it's like, yeah, it's very jarring sometimes. Like I kind of have to like take a step back and be like I'm working for this organization, like what am I doing? But it's like at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, this is like my personal journey. And so sometimes I have to like sometimes I feel like I have to put my feelings aside about like how I feel about the organization as a whole or about like nonprofits in general, like to the back burner, because I'm really trying to focus more on the communities that we're serving. Like, what can I do with the power that I have right now? And so sometimes it just takes a lot of push and pull, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Do you sometimes feel like you sacrifice parts of yourself in order to serve others in that space?
Yeah, I definitely think I did, especially when I first started this role, because my role in particular is supporting service members, and because I feel so strongly about making sure that they are doing okay. I was like sometimes giving a lot of myself, not like setting my own boundaries, not being clear about like when I need to take my own space. And so it's definitely taken a few years, probably up until like this year, honestly, for me to like kind of recognize and learn different strategies and ways for me to like prevent myself from like burning out, like I mentioned earlier, or like feeling like I'm sacrificing so much of my well-being for the sake of the service members who are also sacrificing, like, and I feel like sacrifice is such a strong word, but I'm just gonna keep saying it, but sacrifice themselves for the students and the families and the communities that they're serving. And I know that's a common theme, I feel like, across different like food justice nonprofits, across nonprofits in general, that folks that do a lot of like social service work and things like that.
Whew, well said. No, it's so true. Okay, so when you're giving so much of yourself and you might have like not so great mental health days, do you have any strategies for any Black women that might be on this call, or queer Black femmes or queer Black males that might like masculines that might be on this call who are in this field and are looking for ways to build those boundaries and to build themselves back up when they give so much of themselves within these spaces. Like anything.
Yeah,
anything at all?
so many things. My first thing is therapy. I started seeing my therapist, I think, yeah, when I started this job. And she definitely helped me get through some really rough times. And I feel like now, since we've known each other for 3 years, like she's been able to like see my growth, and I've been able to learn so much from her, like things that I take from my like personal sessions into like my work life. So definitely therapy. And I know that like our healthcare system is effed up on so many levels. So I know that's like not accessible to a lot of folks, but if it is, highly encourage it. And also for me, social media, like you mentioned before, I do love posting on Instagram, on TikTok, Twitter, because there are a lot of folks that I follow who are Black and queer, who have worked in nonprofit spaces, or therapists, social workers who post their personal stories or post advice and tips for people. And I save those posts on my phone to like look at when I'm having like a bad day, or if I just need a moment to like recharge, I'll like grab my phone and look at one of those posts. And like sometimes there are journal prompts too that I like can
I've seen
like,
those.
take like 5 minutes, just to write it down, whether I'm like it's on my phone or I'm texting someone. And then my other thing is, I know a lot of people talk about it, but rest, and finding ways to take time away. So that's definitely something that I've struggled with a lot, is feeling like I don't deserve to take a break, or that I shouldn't take a break, especially if I'm like feeling tired or overwhelmed. So I feel like for other folks who are on this call who have that same feeling, you do deserve to take a break. It is okay. The work will still be there, whether or not you're there or not. So if you need to take a day off, a week off, a few weeks off, please do it, because your like mental well-being is way more important than what is happening right now. You have to make sure you take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. I don't know if that was specific to Black queer folks, but I feel like anyone can take that.
Yeah, that was such good advice, especially about taking a day off. I think in the nonprofit sphere, especially, it's not something that it's something that we oddly encourage, but we don't necessarily practice very often.
Exactly. And me and myself saying that, I take time off, but I still have a lot of vacation days that I haven't used, that I have accrued over my time working. That just shows how much I haven't been taking breaks or taking rest when I need to be. And so that's like also, that reminder was also for me too.
Sometimes we have to take our own advice.
Right. Exactly.
Will we? It's like we may not, but so on that note of working, what is it like, also to bring us back, what is it like being a queer Black woman in a majority white organization that serves communities of color? Because we touched on that earlier, and I really want to get in there.
So I would definitely say I was super nervous coming into the organization, like starting as a staff, just because I didn't necessarily know how many Black people worked at Food Corps and how many queer people worked at Food Corps. And I was like, who am I going to relate to? I was like, who am I gonna, will I be able to find community like I did when I was a service member? Because a lot of my service member friends who are like now considered family were queer and like people of color, and it was very easy for me to like feel comfortable. And so I was worried about going into this space that I knew was predominantly white, and I think it took a really long time for me to feel, I don't want to say fully comfortable, but just comfortable enough to like be my true self. And I think that's like one of the things that I really felt was like, I felt like I needed to tone myself down in a way, but yeah, and as you see now, I'm not like physically, yes. I'm not toning myself down with my green eyebrows and my green hair and my glasses. Like I like beautiful. To be bold yes. out here. But when I first started, I was like, okay, I can't do something. Like I in my mind, I had this mindset that like I can't do certain things, I can't wear certain things. I didn't really know what it meant to like work at a nonprofit organization, because all of my other like previous experiences have been like over the summer or as like more like year-long like volunteer positions. So for me to have like a full-time like salary job was like a really big shift for me, and I like didn't really know what to do really. So I was like constantly out here like looking for folks that I could talk to. And like the great thing I will say is that I've gained a lot of mentors in food corps, a lot of Black women who I look up to, who were like took me under their wing and like have given me advice, have like reminded me take a break, have like made me laugh, have had like dance parties with me. So that definitely has helped a lot in that sense.
Wow. Yeah, I think dance parties are always such a good cure. Like they seem so silly at first, like in concept, it's like a dance party. Then you do it and you're like, oh, I feel a lot better.
It's so fun. You get that energy out.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So when it came to you finding mentors within these spaces, did they come to you or did you seek them out? Like, how did that work?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to remember. I think it happened both ways. There was like a few Black women who started the same year that I started and who also worked in DC office. So we were able to connect in that sense because we were like geographically like close to each other. And then over the past few years, there have been like more and more Black folks have been joining the organization, and we created a group for all of us called OCC, the Onyx Crown Collective. And so we meet monthly. So everyone kind of just like got together to meet monthly and have like little kikis. We also like have folks come and do like lead trainings for us, like a sound bath, or we did like yoga one time. And then there's also a system now where for incoming Black folks who come into the organization, they get paired up with a current staff member, and then like so you can help build connections throughout. And so it was like the precursor to the system that we have now. Is like when I entered the organization, so I was just kind of like, hey, like I see you, like can we chat for like 15 minutes, and or they would like chat me and be like, hey, like would you want to like have a Zoom like coffee date or something like that. And it was kind of like, you know, mutual ways of like me reaching out or them reaching out to me.
That's beautiful. I love that you guys built actual community and like met and had like regular times to like talk to one another, especially since it just occurred to me now, I don't know why, but you started the organization like right on the cusp of COVID, right?
Yes, like, in 2019, right a few months before COVID. Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a big oof. And yes, I'm really sure. Oh my gosh. What an experience. So since you found community in these spaces and you guys sort of like mutually got together and now it's like a thing, and you also mentioned something I thought was really interesting, them do they pair up only incoming people of color or just anyone new who might need a mentor?
That's a great question. I know for a fact that it's like incoming people of color, but I cannot say if I know if it's if it's white folks that get paired up with a mentor as well. But it's definitely like our group that is our BIPOC staff, and then our Black staff definitely do that mentoring thing for folks who are coming into the organization.
Oh, I just think that's so thoughtful and caring in a way that is just, I don't really hear about that very often.
Yeah, it's so I love it. It's so nice, especially because, you know, for me, like like I said, for when I started working in the organization, I kind of had to do that like myself, like organically, but now there's like a system in place where there's like a whole welcome committee where people like share ideas. Yes, I am. Yes, Mama, I am your mentor buddy. Thanks for coming. Yeah, and so it's just so nice that over these past few years that the folks who have been working at Food Corps have like helped create this space, have gotten funding for us to do certain events and do things like that. And it just goes to show that like, you know, things can change within the company's culture. It can take a long time, but there is like always hope. Not always, most of the time, there's hope. At the end, yeah.
Most of the time. So going back to like the moment where you entered the nonprofit space and you thought you had to perform, um, was there ever a moment where corporate nonprofit work felt like corporate America to you?
You know, I don't know if I can speak to that because I don't necessarily know, like the things I know about corporate America are maybe from my friends who work in corporate America or like TV shows or movies. So, but it definitely just like was a different experience for me, learning about, you know, how people like manage their time, how many meetings there are, how much time I was going to spend on Zoom, especially more so when the pandemic started. Just learning about different like quirks of like working with another person or working on like a larger team. And I think especially because Food Corps is a national organization, it's different. I would say it's a different experience than if you work at like a local nonprofit. So yeah, I definitely feel like that's going to be a big transition if I ever like work at a different nonprofit space that's like more locally focused.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed being a service member there too. Like there's so much ongoing communication like across the sphere that there's like a lot of it's just a different environment. There's a lot more diversity and it's acknowledged more openly. There's a lot more moving parts. It's something I thought was really unique about that organization too. So what was the moment of was there like a moment of transition, like your sort of, so to speak, villain era, like when you sort of were just like, I'm gonna be me, I'm not gonna perform? Like what was that like for you? Yeah.
I don't know if it was like a big moment, but I think it was like there was a couple of people that started working the same time that I did and who also had the same role as me, and we kind of started talking a lot and just chatting about our experiences like being new in the organization. And there was just like a lot going on within the organization, within the world, and sometimes we would have like these big staff calls. And I'm a person to say that I'm shy, I'm quiet, like I don't really like to like put myself out there, but yet here I am doing this podcast episode. But yeah, especially like in the workspace, like especially me being a new person, but sometimes it would just be so quiet and no one would be saying like anything, whether that was like asking a question or giving their opinion. And I was like, okay, no, I need to say something. I was like, I need to like break the silence. I just need to like share my opinion. And like after I did that the first time, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, thank you like for speaking up. We so appreciate it. And then I felt, and then it's been taking practice. Like I have to continue to like practice recognizing that my voice like matters and what I have to say is important. And even if I like feel like what I'm saying is like doesn't make sense or is complicated, it's okay because I am taking like the chance of like sharing like and being vulnerable, because it is a scary thing, like being vulnerable, especially over Zoom, especially like with a bunch of people, a bunch of white people. And it takes courage. And I know it took me like a long time for me to be like, okay, it's okay if what I said like was a little all over the place, but I just put myself out there. And at the end of the day, that's like what I always wanted to do, is be able to have that ability to do that.
Wow. I wonder how your identity as a queer Black woman affected that journey and whether or not you just speaking and being present and taking up any amount of space felt like advocacy, like for yourself? Like, did you feel like you were just existing, or did you feel like teaching yourself to exist, or did you feel like you were truly like transforming and like, do you know what I mean? Like advocating for not just yourself, but for this identity that you are, that you represent. Yeah.
I feel that. Yeah. And I think I kind of did, but like was advocating for like my identity, because when I started, I was really interested in being part of the BIMPOC like support group for our service members, but also I helped start the LGBTQ plus affinity group for our staff at Food Corps. I will say we haven't been super duper active, but that's because life is hard. But yeah, I definitely felt like both like my identity as being a Black queer woman was like something that I wanted to bring to the forefront, and something that I was like excited to share like with other people. But also at the same time, like we were talking about earlier, I did start to feel burnt out, because I was trying to do both things, all the things, and I was like, okay, it's just one of me, and like it's so hard to like give, like we were saying before, giving so much of myself to support other people. I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, no, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So to switch gears a little bit, what are your thoughts on how your community, how the communities that your organization serves, like, how do you feel that their values are interpreted in those spaces with you or through you versus without you, if that makes any sense? Sort of like their ideals and their goals, and how that may operate in a more traditional sense, like sort of like by the book, versus like how it may look when you are performing that service. Do you feel like there's a difference?
I feel like, okay, wait, the question was, how does it feel like the organism? Wait, can you just repeat the question? Because there was a lot in there, and I just want to make sure I understand it.
Yeah, I feel like I asked you 3 questions accidentally. So how do you feel that your company's values align themselves with your interpretation of the work? Let's ask that question.
Okay. How do company's values align with my interpretation of the work?
Or like, do you feel like you have to interpret it when you're doing the service work?
Okay, yeah. That's a really good question. I think you like, like everyone, not but every organization like has like their mission, their goal, their values. And I feel like it's so important for every organization to have that, because it helps with the organization's identity. But at the end of the day, I feel like each person is going to take that mission different ways and find different parts of it that they relate more to, or that they feel more strongly about. And even if there are like strategies and like plans, like for Food Corps, we have the service program, and that's how we want to continue to like increase food education in schools. Each service member and each program coordinator, each person and part of the organization is like focusing on different aspects of it. And so I feel like that's a great part about being a part of like such a big organization, is that like you can do so many different things. So like me personally, I felt like when I was a service member, felt really passionate and strongly about the fact that I was Black and I was serving in a school that was basically all Black, and I was able to like be a role model and be like inspiration for kids who might not have like seen someone before, versus like other folks who might feel more passionate or more geared towards like policy and advocacy, and that's like where their realm is. They want to help continue to change things structurally in our system. And so I feel like that is such a integral part of like working at a nonprofit space, like just in general, the fact that there are so many different like moving pieces and so many different things that people can connect and relate to. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does make sense. You know, you
Yeah.
make the role work for you and your values. I mean, you join an organization based on their values, and then you incorporate your values into your role.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm also curious then, since you are not just a queer Black woman, you are also a queer Black woman serving in an area that you grew up in. So considering that you work for and have worked for other national organizations or local organizations, working for a large organization while representing them, but also serving as a representative of your home while serving your home.
Yeah.
Were there ever any complicated moments where you felt you needed to adapt their policies to suit your community's needs?
That's a great question. I feel like sometimes it was like there were certain lessons that like encouraged certain foods, like let me just say like kale. Like I'm trying to like, you know, and we like, and I think that like people know like kale, like a lot of white people are like, oh my gosh, this is like the best like leafy green you can ever taste in your entire life. And you know, you go into a school full of kids, full of Black kids or kids of color, and you're like, try this kale, and they're like, what is this? So I will say I did try that, but only after I built community and like relationship with the teachers and the students. And first, I was like, okay, like what foods and what like how can I help honor the like food culture and tradition of the kids that I'm working with? And so, you know, collard greens are such a big, important part of being Black. And so we made collard greens in class one day, and kids were like, "Oh my gosh, I make this with my parents, with my grandparents when I'm like for like Thanksgiving or for like family holiday." And so I feel like it was certain moments like that where I was using the framework that was provided for me, but I was just swapping out like different things that I felt was more relatable or that I felt more comfortable like sharing about with the students that I worked with.
Absolutely. Definitely, it's so important to adapt what you're doing to your audience. That is so critical. I'm really, really so happy that you knew where you were and you adapted your work to suit what you knew that you would need if you were in their place, you know, like you had an advantage, and I love that so much. So we're at 410 now, and I think from what I remember, when we hit that 410 mark, we're going to start addressing questions from the audience. So let me pull some of them up that I have been given. And I'm going to try to see if I guess correctly who these are addressed to, because it doesn't say necessarily. So the first one, I don't know who asked this question, so I apologize in the chat. If you would like to like say, it was me, then, you know, do that. And then I'll be like, look who it was. So the first question is, how do you address harm in nonprofit spaces, especially perpetrated by people in positions of power? That's uncomfortable. You don't have to talk about necessarily one you're with. You could use an example of another.
That is hard.
A good one.
A good question though. I feel like I'll just say like for me personally, the way that I was able to address harm that I felt happened towards me was because I had community. And I had my supervisor, who's also another like strong woman of color, who I was able to go to and share my experiences. And she was able to relate to me as well. So it was nice to like knowing that I had support from her. And then also like from the other communities that I've created in food corps, whether it was my coworkers who all share the same position as me, or my Black and people of color coworkers who were able to like, you know, might have experienced that themselves. I feel like just being able to share what happened initially and then getting input or getting advice from people in that situation was definitely how I, you know, helped create harm, but not help create harm, but helped
yes,
you know what I mean?
Heal the harm.
Yes,
Yes.
heal the harm. Yeah.
Yes.
But I will say for like when harm is being done to the communities that nonprofits are serving, that is just like such a big thing that I feel like is constantly happening on small levels every single day. And I feel like that is much more difficult to pinpoint and address unless people are constantly speaking up about it or saying it and mentioning it, not letting things fall to the wayside. And I feel like the first step of like mitigating harm is by saying something about it, is by making sure that people in power know that the decisions, the choices that they're making are causing this harm, showing them that, you know, it's like that you would have to like show them that that's how they're harming folks, but sometimes folks need a wake-up call. Sometimes people need to just be constantly reminded. And a lot of times that burden falls on Black folks or people of color,
Speak on it,
which is not fair, not fair at all. And you know, but sometimes at the end of the day, it's like you're like, dang, I just gotta say something. Like you gotta say it with your chest. You gotta just do it.
Yes. It's so scary. And you're so spot on about it falling to the responsibility of the communities that are being harmed and on the individuals being harmed. It's like, where's our advocacy? I'll advocate for myself as per usual, but without bitterness, just with love. You know, we have to learn a different set of coping skills and a different set of advocacy skills. So that was, I love that answer. Thank you so much. The next question is way lighter. You'll love this. What sparks joy in the work that you do?
Oh, wow. That is such a great question.
Isn't it so cute?
I know. I love that. So I'll talk about when I was a service member, and then I'll talk about me as a coordinator right now. So as a service member, what sparked joy?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just wanted to give a shout out. Rochelle Lee.
Yes. Thank you, Ro.
Thank you for the question.
When I was a service member, the thing that sparked joy was the kids. At the end of the day, just being able to like be with them and like share in their excitement and curiosity and joy, and what we were learning about was always just what got me through when I was having a tough time, even when the kids were being tough on me. Sometimes it was still, to me, at the end of the day, it was worth it because I felt like we were building like relationship and building community with each other. And then as a program coordinator in my role right now, the thing that sparks joy is being able to like create spaces for my current service members to connect and, you know, be with one another. So currently right now, what I'm looking forward to is there's this musical that is showing in DC called Grace, and it's about African-American foodways and cultures and things like that. And we're gonna go like as a cohort to see that musical. And so it just feels like it's a great way to just bring people together, especially because we haven't gotten to see each other a lot because of the pandemic. And just like, I just love being able to like meet new people and like connect with them and be able to see the like relationships that are being built amongst each other in the cohort.
I love that. It's like watching people meet and build relationships. It's so pure. And
I know.
And I loved whenever you planned outings for us. It was just, I love that. Even though we couldn't do many, but
I know. It was, we were in the thick of it.
We really were. So the next question, I love this so much. What is your favorite food, or who is your favorite person or people to share a meal with?
Do you want to go, Sydney? Do you want to share one of those?
Sure.
If you want.
No, yeah. So there's something in chat. I think it's the person claiming. Oh no, it's just thank you, Ro. If I can call you Ro. So my favorite food or foods would be like slow foods, comfort foods, braises, like stews and things like that. And also sushi, and I love fish and stuff.
Love sushi.
Yeah, and I love sharing a meal with people that I can have like any variety of conversation with. Like it can go from funny to us crying to us like just, you know, talking about the future or like talking about really weird things. Yeah, I love having meals with that type of energy, like that vibe.
Nice. I love
so
that.
How about you?
So my favorite food, which I've discovered recently, not discovered recently, I've always loved this food, is chicken salad. I just love it so much. I can eat it every day. I have eaten it every day recently for like a week, and I was like, okay, Melissa, you need to chill. But I love chicken salad. And then I love to share meals with friends and family, like, you know, generic answer, but especially with, especially because I like would not consider myself the best like cook or like chef, but like when I am like invited to things and it's like a potluck, I feel like it helps put me out of my comfort zone because I can like make something. And it's been nice to be able to like make things for the folks and taste what other people have made because a lot of my friends and families are great cooks, great chefs, and it's great.
I love that. So Jocelyn Short asked, very good question. Do you put anything in your chicken salad that might be a bit uncommon? Since you're such a fan. I love that so much.
I don't know if it's uncommon, but sometimes I put curry powder in chicken salad and it gives it a little extra spice, a little extra kick to it.
Okay. I've absolutely never heard of that, and I would love to try that. I would love to try that.
It's delicious.
I bet. See, I've never had chicken salad made by someone who loves chicken salad, and I feel like that would be a whole different experience. So, next question. Okay, so this one does seem directed at me, but I'm gonna try. If we have time, I'll ask that question.
Okay.
Because you know, because you know, how important is community education in your program?
I think it's important, but I will say that I feel like we focus more on. Someone said you should answer one.
Okay, I'll do that next.
Yeah, I think that community education is important, is an important part of our organization's mission, but I also feel like a lot of our resources and focus right now has been more individual and like focused on like students in general. But I will say that a lot of folks, a lot of service members who are in their service year do take that community education to heart and do find ways to build relationships and resources like you did, Susan, when you were at Minor with the mutual aid network and help them get like the produce distributions and things like that. Like that is community networking, community building. And I feel like a lot of service members and a lot of folks do that. And I do think it is a big part, could be bigger. I think that it could always be bigger to like help engage the entire community and not just certain folks in the work that we're doing.
Yeah, it's also an interesting thought too, because eventually, like this sounds so cliche, but you educate the children and then you like that leads to community education because they're taking their education and they're building upon it. Yeah. So the question that I skipped was, how did you choose this topic to explore, and does it relate to any of your work in the food studies program? So that, I don't know who that was asked by, obviously someone at this organization. So I chose this topic because as a Black woman in the queer community, I was really amazed by my time at Food Court and how they worked really hard to build spaces for my various identities, like my intersections. And I felt like it would have been a much harder route to navigate had I not known that I had those spaces to go to. Because just living as a queer Black woman day to day, it can be a bit exhausting, just navigating everyday interactions, everyday experiences, because I feel like we're inundated with information and messaging and coding that encourages smallness, encourages less than, and fight. And that's sort of, I think that really links back to like when you were talking earlier about encouraging yourself to speak up in a space that's supposed to be advocating for human expression and human justice. And it's very ironic sometimes that even within these egalitarian spaces, we have to encourage ourselves because of our different intersections to be as present as possible and a contributing member without just relying on our labor. Because I think that happens a lot, like where our labor is expected, our voice is unexpected. And so I just thought it would be really interesting to have a conversation with you, Malika, because you were such an inspiration to me and it's always so encouraging. And I'm like, yeah, and like, I'm sorry, I know I know it's a lot, but like, it's just so nice to see how like you navigate the space. And I know it's not perfect, obviously, but you still do it. You still do it. And I love scrolling through your Instagram stories and I always feel better. And I found so many different people to follow because of that, because you are active in that way. You use your voice in different ways and in different spaces. And anyways, that's my answer. So moving on.
Thank you, Sydney. Appreciate that so much.
Well, I appreciate you. So muchas gracias. Let me see, what's this next question here? This is really interesting. So how do your interests look now in comparison to 3 years ago?
Wow. Self-growth, self-reflection.
Okay, I love that.
I feel like 3 years ago, I thought I could see myself being a teacher. I could see myself, being a part of the school system and working with kids every day. And, now working at Food Corps and not necessarily have been working directly with kids every single day, I have come to realize that I do really want to move more towards being able to work with kids on a more frequent basis, but not necessarily being a teacher. And so currently right now, what I'm thinking about doing is like what's next in my career is going to grad school to get my master's in social work social work or school counseling because both of those things I feel like will bring me joy, would be challenging, but also something that I feel very committed about. And I feel like I've learned that about myself these past 3 years that I definitely wouldn't have said 3 years ago if you'd asked me like what my interests were, when I have said school counseling or social work at all.
Man, that is so interesting. I love that you are planning on going to grad school or thinking about it. I love that.
Thinking
I love
about
that
it,
it's in the ether, you put it out there, and I love your subject matter. I feel like that suits you so well. So it looks like we are almost at we are at 4:25 and we can have like time for maybe one or two more questions. So really interesting. How do you navigate whiteness in these spaces? It's a little hot button, a little hotty waddy.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. How do I navigate?
A little spice.
Yeah. That's a big question. Wow. I don't even know how to answer that. You don't feel obligated to answer. Okay. No, thank you for asking the question, Jocelyn, because it is like a really great question. I think it's just because I haven't thought about that, because I feel like it's so ingrained in how we move throughout life, being like me being a Black queer person, and like, sometimes being in spaces that are predominantly white. And like when I think about it, I just feel like I just try and show up as myself, but that I don't know if that is necessarily me navigating whiteness per se. if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. I'm gonna push, but I'm gonna say something. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I love that question because I kind of feel like who you are in general is already navigating whiteness. You're
Yeah,
already
by
pushing back
being.
against the norm. Yeah, simply by
Yeah.
being. So I guess I'll ask you this in that context then. How do you feel navigating these predominantly white spaces as yourself? Like, do you sometimes feel a little bit drained? Like, does it take a toll on you? Like, if that's too much, then we can move on, and I don't mind. But I kind of wanted to,
No, yeah. I mean, it definitely depends on the like situation, but definitely feel drained because I think one of the questions that we like were maybe going to talk about was like code switching.
Yeah, we didn't
Yeah,
even.
yeah, I
Whoa,
know.
we
Yeah,
didn't
we
even
would
get
touch on
to.
it, but I remember it was in the list, and
Yeah.
so I feel like yeah, depending on the situation, I feel like I do code switch. It hurts my heart. I'm like I don't want to do it. Like, but it feels sometimes it's like this feels like the safest way for me to be right now, or this feels like the most energy that I can give, even though it is a lot of energy to code switch, but it's like something that you like as a Black person, as a Black queer person navigating spaces, and recognizing that sometimes you don't have to share your whole self to certain people that you don't want to. And you people could do that in various ways, whether that's code switching or just like, doing certain, I try to think of another example, but other ways like that. And so I feel like, depending on what's happening, I do feel like I am like drained. And sometimes I feel like I don't really care what anyone else thinks in this room. I'm just gonna do me. I'm gonna say me, stay true to myself and do whatever I want. But those days depends on how I'm feeling. Depends on how much like energy and how much I myself am like willing to give to whoever or wherever I'm like entering.
That is so real. It's like, what's your starting battery charge, And that can determine like, and also like where your location is, because that can also affect your battery charge.
Exactly.
Yeah. But one thing you touched on that I thought was so critical that was much lower on the list of questions because that's when stuff was going to get thick.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Another day, maybe. You touched on safety and you touched on not always revealing your full self. And I honestly feel like that's so important to consider. Like sometimes I think we can be a little judgmental of ourselves and how we behave in these spaces and maybe like, why aren't I being my most authentic and full self? And it's like, maybe I don't feel fully safe. And I think that that's something really important to think about. But okay,
yeah.
let me go ahead and wrap my own stuff up and let Ani come on and wrap things up for all of us. But thank you so much, Malika.
Yes, thank you, Sydney.
This was an amazing conversation. Malika, I didn't get a chance to talk to you very much before we got started, but like a lot of the things that you said resonated with me as before I started this program. I was a social worker, was a therapist, and so just talking about the expectation of giving all of yourself for these communities is so draining and can burn you out very quickly. And so I just really appreciate both of your guys' honesty and just being unapologetic and just being, this is how I am and it's enough and you're gonna take it and you're gonna like it because it's beautiful, it's great.
Exactly.
I really appreciate you guys. For everyone, I just want to thank you guys for joining us today. If you guys want to see what it's like to be in Sydney's seat and being a student moderator, or maybe you want to be like Malika and be one of our guests, please feel free to fill out this submission form that I'm going to put in the chat right now. And feel free to fill that out, or you can email us at you can email us at craft@chatham.edu. And if you have any questions about anything like that. As soon as the survey is over, survey should pop up And if you guys could fill out that survey and give us some feedback just so we can know how to do better, or just how to, continue to improve this program, we would greatly appreciate it. And then a link will also be followed up in a following email with the survey if you're not able to do it right now. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Craft Chatham, all one word. And yeah, this is our last episode for this series. I really, really appreciate Sydney and Katie, our last student moderator, and all the work that they did to prepare for this. They really had thoughtful, insightful, and just very true conversations, and I just really appreciate it. And I want to thank our special guests, Malika and Clarissa, as well. You guys made this series a special one, and we can't wait to see what we have next, our next series. Awesome. All right, thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again sometime.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Bye. Take care.